Today's guest is Dave Sobel. In today's episode, we'll discuss several topics ranging from IT service providers and how they engage with other businesses. We'll also talk about some buzzwords such as digital transformation, mergers and acquisitions, and how they've dominated the conversation within the industry. Finally, we'll discuss how IT service providers could be headed towards regulation and why this is important for the industry and its customers to understand. With that, let's get started. All right, let's get started. Dave, thanks just so much for joining me today. I appreciate you taking the time out to have some conversation.
Oh, Nick, thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah, so you are a man who is very much used to our business concepts. For those who don't know, I part own MSP, a managed service provider practice, and basically it's outsourced IT and figuring it's an IT service provider. And it sounds like you have a pretty deep history there. So I'd love for you to give a little bit of background about yourself and how you understand that marketplace.
Sure. So it always, it's a smile. You say, like, how far back do you want to go? And I think the interesting bit to start with is, so I have a degree in computer science. And so I am a technical guy by background. And if you'd ask college me, and I just celebrated my college homecoming this past weekend. So if you'd ask college me what I would be doing over my career, it's like building technology products and coding and developing is where I would have anticipated being this many years later. And I did that for a while. I built some product. I did up and downs in the late 90s and early aughts. It was a great run when technology, the dot-com boom, like I did all that stuff. And rode on the second one that crashed and burned. The lesson I took away from it was that the owners didn't get hurt the way the developers and the low-level employees were. And I quipped at the time, like, I can run a business into the wall just as much as those numbnuts.
Yeah.
So I launched a technology company. And at the time, my expertise was web development and infrastructure. So I was one of those web guys who could build the web server too and implement it and run the SQL. And in a moment of hubris said, I'm going to go into infrastructure. That's the easier side.
Oh, yeah.
And I built an MSP. So I ran a managed services IT outsourced company for a decade. That was and it was one of those ups and downs runs that any business owner will tell you, right? There are high highs and low lows. I was involved in peer groups. I was a Microsoft MVP. I wrote a book. I was a CompTIA trainer. I launched peer groups in Europe with some of the IT peer groups organization. I was like community guy, right? Yeah. And bought a company, which was a horrible disaster during that, and then sold my business. I had the opportunity to sell it after a 10-year run. And I always described it as it was a successful exit and I needed a job. Because it was a successful exit, I put all that money aside. It is working for me. And when I retire, I will be incredibly happy that I took that money, I invested it over the course of my life. Yeah. But I needed a job the next day. And rather than I wasn't going to be one of those consultants that just taught everybody how to run an IT business. I actually went to work for software vendors. Oh. So I went to work for software vendors in our space. And as an owner, you know that one of the core tenets of the technology is a couple of core technology pieces in your stack that you use to run your business. I worked for RMM providers for a while. I worked for a company called Level Platforms. We sold that after I was almost 2 years. We sold it to AVG. I went to work for GFI. We became Logic Now. We sold that business to SolarWinds. It's heard of SolarWinds, even our end customers, because of their infamous reasons for being in the news.
Yep, unfortunately.
I left SolarWinds a week before they were breached.
Oh, wow.
So my timing is impeccable.
Absolutely.
And that was a great 8-year run. I'm very proud of the communities that we built, and the work to help MSPs grow was what we were doing. So it was around education and enablement, because the basic idea is if the MSPs do better, they buy more software. That is legitimately the way that the business model worked for us. Is so if we can help MSPs grow, they would grow their businesses and thus they would buy more software. Did that for 8 years, grew up the GFI Logic Now community, that whole run. And 3 years ago, I decided it was time again to do something else. And I said I wanted to do another version of this kind of education. And I launched the media company. And now I run MSP Radio, which is the company whose flagship podcast is The Business of Tech. And it's a daily 5-minute news and commentary podcast where I focus on news of the day and what an IT provider should take away from that news, what's important to grow your business. And that's what I do now. And so it gives me the opportunity to give some insights into the space and into technology trends.
Wow. Yeah, I feel like you followed a course which a lot of people would have started out and saying, okay, this could be my career. and it ended up migrating into almost a lifestyle choice. This seems like a lot more fun than maybe where you started, what you're doing today. I don't know. That's just my
Yeah,
sense of it all.
so I will smile and go like, I really loved each stage of my career when I was in
Mhm.
it. But I also I'm also the kind of guy that knows that I'm like a builder, right? Like a lot of business owners, I like to build things.
Mhm.
I built an MSP for 10 years. Well, then I built that, right? So then I built vendor communities for 8. Okay, I
Yeah.
built that. Now I want to build something else, right? Like I
Yeah.
constantly want to build something else. And each one
Mhm.
has tried to build on the experience before. Maybe in another, I don't know, 8 to 10 years, I'll go, oh, I got to build something else, right? Like, who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, that's right. And okay, so thinking about building and thinking about IT providers, because both my goal here is to bring in both IT providers and business people in general, and trying to bridge that gap because there's a lot of confusion out there. I feel like in the marketplace, at least in our little bubble here that we call Eastern Central Pennsylvania, and so like when you think about business owners, you think about businesses, how as you look at the market. Sorry, excuse me. Let
Yeah.
me formulate my question. As you look at the market, what are some stumbling blocks for businesses as they look for IT providers, and that vice versa? What are some stumbling blocks that IT providers have when going out trying to bring in new organizations?
Yeah. If I'm really trying to simple it down to a thematic problem, it
Mm,
really comes down to the disconnect between the technology and the business.
mm,
That for me is where I can almost always focus and find where the issue is. And I actually have a model that I have on I put out about the way that I think about technology and the way that it enables for me. And it all comes down to the profit and loss statement, the P&L. I always quip, I'm in the business of making money.
that's right.
Businesses are also in the business of making money. They are engines designed to do a thing, produce a thing, a product, a service, and keep some profit at the bottom. That is what a business, we laugh, but sometimes we lose a little bit of
Yeah,
sight of that.
it's true.
And particularly like guys like me, like I'm in technology because I love technology. It's cool. I
Mm,
love gadgets. I love gizmos. But when I apply that in a business, I want to make sure that it matches, right? That it matches that bit. And I break it down into what I call the good, better, best model of thinking about technology. Anybody that buys computers and technology because they need it in there, because they can't do anything without it, that's good.
yeah,
Most business owners will recognize that they have to provide computers to do their business. They can't send email. They can't
yeah.
do the basics of business without having computers. That's good. They've recognized the need and they live in the SG&A portion of a profit and loss statement where they're viewed as an expense, right?
Mm,
Technology is an expense. I
yeah,
must buy this thing. I have to have it. I put it right next to my office. I put it right next to I must have a healthcare and I've got to have employee benefits and they must have computers. It's an expense. And
yeah.
I acknowledge that's good, right? They have acknowledged the need, and a provider that provides those services, it's also good, right? They have, because you need it. You're
Yeah.
serving a need. But we can do better. Because better is the idea of I'm going to use technology to reduce costs. I'm going to actually make your people more efficient. I'm going to make them more productive. And I'm going to measure that. And I can measure your technology spend against exactly what I'm doing to reduce your costs. And now I live in your cost of goods sold in a profit and loss
Mm,
statement, right? Because I can measure the impact to the way you drive your business by reducing costs or make you more efficient or do whatever it is that in your business. That's better. It's
mm,
much better, in fact, is
yeah.
if I can do that. Best? What's best is when I can drive top line revenue through the technology investment that you've made. So that I'm actually, like you, the business owner, are spending money on technology and I am driving the way you make money. Maybe you're driving more business through e-commerce. Maybe you are bringing in
Yeah.
more membership if you're a not-for-profit. Maybe you are enabling whatever it is, you're able to sell more and drive more revenue
Mm,
through your technology choices. That's best. And it
mm,
works really well for both sides, right? If a business owner can measure their technology spend that way, and the technology provider knows the tech they're producing does those things, the business is in alignment with their customers, everyone's doing it, and you want to be in that best realm. Now, by the way, note the words I use, they're intentional. Good is good. I want to acknowledge that, right? We got to do those things.
right. That's right.
but we want to be best.
Yeah. And so what I hear you really talking about is this total return on investment. This is an investment opportunity for organizations to implement technology into their stack and to do it well.
Right. That is the point. And by the way, most of the buzzwords in our space are just saying that in different ways. My favorite one lately is digital transformation, right?
Yes,
If anybody listens to my stuff knows that I'm constantly trashing the term digital transformation because I laugh and I go, you mean just do the things you're supposed to do?
Yeah.
Transform your business? This sounds like consultant speak for the stuff you just need to do. Right.
Oh, yeah.
and by the way, the bad side of that is if your business requires digital transformation, it's a nice way of saying you're behind the times. You have not kept up.
Which, to be fair, there's probably a lot of organizations out there, at least a lot of ones we run into.
Totally true. Totally true. But it's nice consultant speak for saying all of those things.
Man, it's so nice to the ear.
And so I'll call it out and just go, no, you're behind. I'm sorry, you're behind. And let's instead look at this as, yes, it's a digital transformation, but what we're actually doing is we're just spending technology to drive your business in the right way. So yeah, it really just drives it back to that. I got into tech because I like doing things with the technology. They are best when I'm driving productive things that I can measure against top line revenue.
And I think the things people get confused with is they think this is a vertical issue. Technology is a return for you over here in manufacturing, but for me, it's just an expense.
Nick, I always love it. If I had a dollar for everybody said my market or my business or my space is totally unique, I would be retired and have sit on piles of money. And by the way, I've done this. You can hear in my experience. I've worked with tens of thousands of managed services providers around the world, right? Like in different, and the basics of business are the basics of business everywhere that I've done engagements. This is a fundamental bit. And you got to get it right.
Yeah. No, I affirm you. I actually totally believe in everything you're saying because it's probably the number one thing we struggle with as a company to grow organically is to convince the other side that we are more than an invoice. We are an asset to your company where we belong. And all they hear is, oh, that sounds nice, but you're still an
But by the way, everything I've just talked about, I want to acknowledge is hard. It is hard. Right. And it is why why I'm a big believer in consulting and engagement and customization because this is hard to do. And because it was easy, everyone would just do it and we wouldn't talk about it. And it does require buy-in, right? It requires buy-ins on both sides, and it requires really in-depth conversations on both sides with business owners that get it. Now, the business owners that do it will pay happily. So I'm a business owner myself. I will spend $1 to get 2. I will spend $1 to get 2 every single time.
Absolutely.
But showing that measurement is hard to get. It requires discipline. It requires investment of time and energy and process to make sure that we can measure those technology spends. And by the way, it's not always perfect, right? Sometimes we are going to have to take a little bit of a leap of faith to make it happen, but we should also know that we should be able to tie back enough to make ourselves feel comfortable about the investments that we've made.
And that's all fair. And really what you're talking about good customers. And these are the people that actually understand their business. These are the people that understand the flow of how things function.
And by the way, on both sides, technology providers and the business owners both have to have the sophistication to do these conversations. I laugh and go, I always know, because you went right to the conversation around like business and such. And I always know, anytime I talk to an MSP, if they start asking me about like a tool set, it's, okay. I know where your head's at. Not the space that I want your head in. And the same, by the way, on the business owner side too, right? Going right into just talk about costs. It's like, okay, we can, but if you're actually talking about how you drive revenue, how you build your business, what's important to you from a priority perspective, that's another whole conversation.
And so really what we need is IT providers out there to give literal value. So you could say, okay, we provide value. Okay, now tell me it, show me it. Give that business owner the value that you provide. If you don't have a healthy understanding of yourself, you're not going to be able to provide that value. You're like, well, we do good work.
Yes. And by the way, and this is where you kind of laugh and go, so who says they do bad work? And this is where I kind of laugh and go, if you want to take a good hard look at your own, any business, and IT providers in particular, want to look at their messaging and go, could anybody else say that? Because no one runs around saying, we have really bad employees and really bad customer service, and we don't call you back.
That's right.
So if that's your differentiator, perhaps it's not really a differentiator. Which is better? Hey, we have great people and provide great customer service. Or we've helped the last 3 customers improve their top line revenue by 7%.
Easy.
I know who I'm hiring.
That's exactly right. Exactly. Yeah. No, and you're spot on. And maybe we just take each other's playbooks too often where we're just all harping on the same exact thing. We're not giving literal detail. We're not giving literal examples from customers today. It's just all regurgitated stuff like digital transformation that means nothing.
Right. And this, we like to make this super complicated, right? And particularly IT guys. We all love our buzzwords and our acronyms, and we get super deep in the technology itself. And that's not actually what the customers really want, nor is it what actually drives your business.
Wow. That's a really good word. One thing you mentioned this earlier, and I really want to revisit it today, is you said you bought a business. It went horribly. Thinking about mergers and acquisitions, because I feel like in the market today, in the IT service market, provider market today, mergers and acquisitions are all the rage, man. Whether it's a vendor or an actual IT provider, I just feel like there are mergers and acquisitions everywhere. So I'd love, if you're okay telling this story, I'd love to know, where did it go sideways on you? What was the painful process about purchasing another business?
By the way, I do want to acknowledge, while that it's all the discussion point of everyone doing an M&A, it is like a fraction of a percent of the actual providers doing it. So if you look at North America, there's anywhere between 80 and 160,000 IT solution providers across North America.
Yeah.
And I think we're tracking 800 or so M&As this year. That's what, like a fraction of a percent of the market.
So
super buzzy, but now,
why is it so buzzy? Sorry, before you get into your story, why is it so buzzy? Like, why, if it's only a fraction, is it because of the money spent? Like, why is it such a buzzy term anymore?
Well, because there's 2 reasons. Okay. The first is every IT business owner would like to figure out a faster way to grow their business, right? Than doing, and so an M&A feels like a shortcut, right? It feels like, this is a shortcut, I can go faster. The second is, there's people looking to invest in this space that would like you to very much talk about M&A. There's money that would very much like you, that is looking for buyers that would very much like you to talk about M&A. And by the way, there's M&A action going out there.
Yeah.
I think that's an interesting space. I just want to put it in relative terms.
Context is important.
Not everyone's doing it. Now, you asked me a very interesting question, what went wrong? And I will tell you that it was, I totally screwed up the due diligence. I did tons of work on modeling out what the pricing would look like, how the contracts would work, how the tech stack would work. I had that all figured out. But what I didn't spend nearly enough time on, was the culture fit, the culture process, the communication process, understanding the background of those customers, their expectations, the employees' expectations, my own employees' expectations, all of the due diligence that really matters on planning that out. I just did not do enough of that.
So basically, you looked at the numbers.
Oh yeah, on paper, exactly. On paper, it was fantastic. Yeah. I totally figured this all out, and I spent just so abysmally low the amount of time required to really do that. Now, because I am not an idiot, and I had done the work on the business side, the contracts were done in a way where I did not torpedo my own organization because of the way that I'd put it together. But it was a rough ride culturally. Like, it was very much a rough ride. But I learned a lot. I learned a lot about the importance of culture and the importance of communications and the words that matter, the way you engage, and the background. And I'll tell you, one of the lessons I took about it was I was very transparent when I did my own sale. I opened the kimono very early in the process and let the buyer in to look at my books, to talk to my people, to understand the culture and find out if there was a match, and do all of that really early so that we could try and head off any of those problems.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense, because you're right. It is a buzzy term, and it makes sense because there's a lot of money being pushed in that market. And I was just curious how that story went, because you only hear good stories about this. You don't ever hear really that there is a con, that there is something that needs to be happening in the background that could definitely backfire on you.
And people, look, you get it. People want to talk about the good stuff. They want to talk successful. There are buyers that want this to seem like a great thing for sellers. They're selling the dream. I very much hang my hat these days on like brutal authenticity and honesty. I make a lot of predictions, right? And not all of them are right. But if I'm not making bold ones that are sometimes wrong, I'm not making enough interesting ones and taking risks. And so I can learn a lot from a bad prediction just as easily as I can learn a lot from a good one. And so from my perspective, yeah, like I'm happy to talk about all the things I screwed up too, because I learned a lot from those, and I learned from those experiences. And I'll tell you, that's where I learned culture, was screwing that up.
Yeah. And speaking of culture, just thinking about, again, the IT provider space, what do you see in the culture today and maybe certain trends that are happening in the IT provider space outside of technology stacks? Like, what is the culture and the perception of IT providers today within the broader community?
It's interesting, a bit linked to Stack, but in a way you might not expect. I think too many providers are hanging their hat on the way they've done business for the last 20 years and not anticipating the rapidly changing world that we're. The number of providers that spend their time talking to me about the importance of their technology stack and their perfect go-to-market gold, silver, platinum, paper, tinfoil packages, and without looking to the growing, emerging trend, particularly about the way technology is consumed, is the big glaring area that I look at. I like to play this little game with everybody I talk about and say, think we're recording in 2022, right? If you and I were to go start a business today, a brand spanking new, shiny new business, right? We'd go buy a bunch of cloud SaaS services. That's how we'd start. We'd go 100% in, right? We get our, we like Microsoft. We go Microsoft 365. We'd go probably in on OneDrive. SharePoint will go in on, I don't know, Teams. I'd go Slack. But we'd collaborate in Slack. We would buy probably a lot. We'd probably need to be in a line of business application of some kind, right, for our space. But we're totally going to get it via SaaS, right? Because why would I spend a bunch of money on something? I'm a startup. We're just getting going. I would consume a bunch of stuff with all cloud SaaS. And in fact, I wouldn't worry that much about my endpoints. I would just get my people connected to cloud SaaS, and I would make sure my cloud SaaS is very well protected. Like I would make sure that I've got good data access controls. I would go good identity management. I would make sure that I would focus on compliance. I would make sure that like access is done really well, and I would protect the crown jewels. And the crown jewels of my business would be all of the data that lives in the cloud. I go hard on that stuff. Go a zero trust kind of model. Wouldn't trust any access. Think about all of the things I've just described. The big offering that an IT provider would offer to me in that business would be advice and helping make all these things work together, make them really efficient, make my people really good at it. What I wouldn't be worrying very much about is like the endpoints and all of that kind of stuff. But how many IT providers spend all this time worrying about like antiviruses and endpoint management and must have an agent on every machine? Like, where are they spending their time versus where the market is today? And by the way, it's 2022. Market's been this way for a while. Like if we got the DeLorean and we went 5 years ago, the business I just described would probably look a lot the same for launching a business today. And by the way, we talked about digital transformation at the beginning of this show. I made fun of it, but at the same time, legacy businesses want to get to that. They want to look like that because it's a really modern, scalable, implementable way. The only thing that hold them back is tech debt. They have debt in the things that they've invested in that have gotten them where they go, but they know they may not be the things they want to get to. And I look at that gap and I say, that's the area that I think IT providers are not spending enough time thinking about, except for the ones that I'm seeing outperforming the market. There's an agile group that are spending a lot of time really focused on making sure that stuff works really well. Identity management is really strong, cloud SaaS management, data protection, but focusing on the crown jewels, right? Like the company's data sets, making and protecting them against from having to ever pay a ransom, that kind of move, versus the protect all the things model. There's too many things. You're never going to do it. You're never going to win. And every security expert will tell you that. But if I can protect the crown jewels and make sure that the core systems in cloud SaaS are done really well, that's the way of the future.
Interesting. You're talking about really disrupting a lot of people's business plans, I ain't gonna lie, in the way that they create quotes for providing IT services. But you think that needs to transform. You think that needs to change with the times.
I think the market's already changed and many of these providers haven't noticed.
Oh, wow. That's dangerous.
Am I wrong? There,
I don't think
I'll like so. All the guys, and I say this because I want providers to be super successful.
Yeah.
I want them to look at the market and I want them to say, what are the conditions on the ground, and can I be competitive in those spaces? By the way, guys like me are always making big, bold predictions about everyone dying off. I'm not saying that. I'm saying you can be behind the times. You can be a laggard and you can make a healthy living, right? Like there is plenty of space for that. Because by the way, there's customers that are laggards too.
That's right. Yep.
I'm just more interested in moving forward. Yeah. And if you're a younger guy, I'm a younger guy, like I'm going to be at this for a little while.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that I'm relevant to customers for a long time. That means I got to be keeping pace with them at the very minimum. And that's where the activity is.
And to be fair, going back on earlier in our conversation, this is the value you're talking about. I mean,
right.
You're talking about digitally transforming these customers, these people here, and actually bringing them into today versus
to the way that we're deploying technology today. And there's lots of great advantages to that. And there's cool models of that. And we have to help everyone move along with it. And you'll move at your different pace, and different customers will have different needs. And by the way, we tie it back to the P&L, what's important to them and the way they make money. And we've got to tie it through to what their capabilities are. And then but at the same time, we got to watch where the market is going. And these debates over tech stacks and stuff like that. So you're missing where the rest of the world is, everybody.
Okay, so that's really interesting because, again, when organizations hire IT providers, what they're looking to bring in is somebody to push them along, somebody to tell them, give them direction, to be the captain of their whole IT for their whole organization. But a lot of times what we're seeing is a lot of maintenance and complacency in the market today. And no one's really pushing it forward. And maybe that's partially the customer, maybe that's partially the IT provider. But no matter what, it doesn't seem like we're pushing it forward fast enough.
I'll smile and go, market is moving. Whether or not everyone is swimming along with it. Because, by the way, anybody who, if you're listening at home, you're shaking your fist at me. It's like, I got plenty of examples of customers that are moving that fast, that are out that piece. I've got providers that are out there doing this. It's not the majority. Sure. I definitely am not saying it's not the majority. Last I checked, herd thinking is not the one that pushes best-in-class performance. Okay. I mean, like, I'm just the one doing the analysis for everybody. I'm going to do my job to point this out. I'm going to show where the trends are. I'm going to show where the opportunities are. It's up to you to take action on it.
Is that why, and I feel like there's a direct correlation here, is that why we're seeing some IT providers underneath the gun as we think about regulations, as we think about regulatory things within Congress and a couple of states getting a little antsy on, okay, are IT service providers a good thing, or should companies really be investing in-house? Is there a direct correlation there because the IT provider services are lagging behind?
Would immediately go, yes, absolutely. Because let's be politicians for a quick second. And in particular with the cybersecurity environment that we're living in right now. I like to put this in very stark terms, cybersecurity. And by the way, I hate this whole space. I don't like talking cybersecurity because, but and it's important to understand why. I got into technology because I like building things and I like helping people be productive. Cybersecurity is literally just protecting against criminal act. I have to buy more locks. And let's make this physical. Gangs of criminals are roaming the streets, breaking into businesses, taking hostages, and using weapons. If this was physical, we would be demanding police action. We would be demanding our leaders think literally about the number of incidents we talk about all the time, and we call them incidents. Break-ins that happen daily in businesses. If gangs of criminals were roaming the streets, we would be demanding police action. And if they were coming from foreign actors, we would be crying for military response. But because it happens in cyber, we just, okay, whatever. And then we do a lot of victim blaming, right? But,
true.
And by the way, everyone says, because a lot of security guys will always go, Dave, don't you put locks on your doors? I go, yeah, of course I do. Yeah. But if I forget to lock the door, it doesn't take 4 seconds for the criminals to break into my house. I say there aren't gangs roaming the streets outside my house. But online, they're so aggressive and such. And by the way, organized crime. For our non-technical listeners, this isn't some dude in their basement just doing this. This is organized criminal gangs that are operating, well, oftentimes in foreign countries under protection of those governments, making money. They have PR departments, they have financial departments, they have HR, they have customer service. They can get grandmothers to pay in Bitcoin through customer service lines. You can't tell me that's not impressive. Right? So we have to put the cyber crime problem in that context. Now, you ask about regulation. Every politician in the world wants to be able to say, I protect American citizens. I protect small businesses. I'm going to do something about this criminal scourge.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Both sides of the aisle. Quickest way to get into office is I'm tough on crime.
That's right. Oh, no, you're spot on.
So I'm spot on. So you can look at this and say, from a political perspective, movement here is bipartisan. It's why there's discussions around privacy laws at the congressional level that are bipartisan, because you can both sides recognize that we've got to do something around data protection. It's real easy to talk about regulation around data protection and data security because we've established there are certain basics that need to be done, that it is kind of criminal negligence if you don't. Yeah. So they're putting in actions. It makes perfect sense. And if you're a provider not keeping up with that stuff, yeah, you're going to get totally stomped on by this, because it makes perfect sense that they're moving in to regulate this.
Honestly, I think the biggest thing that hit me there that you just talked about was that whole analogy, because it's true. But you're right. We don't pay attention because it's in the whole cyber world, and tons of people don't understand that world, and that's fine and dandy, I guess. That's why they hire us for sometimes. But you're spot on. Really, what we're seeing here is there are people trying to get us, and we don't think they are, because we have some people either have really good locks right now, but the reality is that it's constantly changing, and they're finding new ways to get in. And every day you hear about something new. Oh, this vulnerability here, this exploit there, and really, it's a frustrating market. So it makes sense that Congress and regulations are not far behind.
Yeah, exactly. It makes perfect sense, right? And by the way, anybody that says, "Oh, we'll clean it up ourselves," how's that going?
Not too well so far.
Exactly. I weighed in on these conversations all the time because I happen to be pro-regulation. I happen to think it makes sense to put some minimum standards in place here. And I think we could have a very healthy debate about where the minimum standards are, and let's make sure they make sense. I'm totally on board with all that. But I listen to some providers that are like, government getting involved. And I'm just like, how good job are you doing right now in protecting our customers? Because from my vantage points, they're getting just taken. And imagine the coverage if an incident was physical. It bleeds, it leads, right? So it would be nonstop. If there was physical evidence of these breaches, it would be all consuming. But that's not how it goes, because it's an abstract thing. And by the way, we as technologists do a poor job of communicating that out to our customers. We use horrible words for this.
Oh, you're right.
Incident, threat actor, a breach, an incident. Like it's all sterilized words that don't convey what's actually happening. And I was laughing. I use really harsh words, but you visualized it perfectly. You understand exactly what I was talking about. And customers aren't dumb. They get it when we explain what's going on, and the evidence is out there. You can show them distinctly, like, it is gangs of criminals. You want to learn about it? It's fascinating. They're really good at it. You can like they're the modern day mafia. Let's talk about it. It's Tony Soprano with a keyboard.
Wow. And you talked about people maybe complaining about the whole regulations thing. Frankly, when you first said that, I was like, okay, yeah, I could see that. But honestly, it would actually make my job easier. There wouldn't be a bunch of posers out there telling people they can provide value without, hey, we legitimately follow this. And
exactly. Wouldn't it great if there was some framework that everyone could hang their hats on, that are professionals, that would know exactly what it is, the same way highly respected industries like lawyers, CPAs, you can't operate on somebody without some level of certification. Ooh. You can't do their taxes without, but we let people just do brain surgery on businesses with their data, just some guy.
Wow.
That just doesn't seem like a great idea to me.
Frankly, these analogies are blowing my mind, because it's so true. It's so true. I mean, is data not where the value's at for a company? And you're right.
And and we're all back to data value, right? Like the real value in somebody's business is the data. It is that piece. And you want to spend your time on maximizing the use of the data, making sure that you've minimized the risk of it, protecting it. That's why one of the things that I think is an emerging, interesting field is data governance. But more than just the idea of we're going to manage and protect your data, let's only collect things we know we need to, for reasons that are documented, such that we don't get ourselves in legal trouble for hoovering up too much data and then being stuck with it and getting breached. If we know why, we can actually do a really good job ethically of managing our customers' data and helping them maximize that data to make business decisions and make more money and drive the top line revenue. It all comes back to one another in terms of where your focus is, both as a customer and as an IT provider.
This is honestly fantastic. At the risk of cutting things off, I don't want to cut things off. In fact, what I'd actually like to do, I think, is go round 2 sometime.
Nick, I would love to. Anytime, I'm always available. And of course, and I would be remiss if I didn't say, I publish lots of stuff, big ideas, big thoughts on my channels. You can catch all of that kind of information. If you're interested in exploring new ideas, that's what I do all the time.
Yeah, and I will just reaffirm that is so true. I probably spent an hour looking through your stuff, and I thought, well, I could probably spend a couple weeks here because there is a ton of content. So that is no joke. You got quite a bit of stuff piled together, and I'm sure you will have new content continuously for a long time the way the market is today.
This is why I love this space. I love helping with technology because it is interesting. We can do lots of cool stuff. We can drive great outcomes for customers. It's hard. I like hard problems. They're fun to solve and they're profitable.
Yeah. Oh, amen to that. Thank you so much, Dave. I really appreciate you joining our show today. And we'll make sure to link everything back to you on our podcast description and make sure that we can get some traffic going for you because you do have quite a bit of amazing content there and it takes a while to sift through.
Thank you, Nick. I appreciate it. All the links to everything that I do are at businesshub.tech. You can find everything I do. If you like newsletters, podcasts, videos, it's all there. Nick, thanks for having me. Would love to come back anytime you need me.
Awesome. Thanks again. I'd like to thank Dave for being on air today. To say Dave was a natural conversationalist would be an understatement. In fact, I felt like I should have created a series to continue several ongoing conversations. Dave's knowledge of the IT channel is clear and he has much to offer through his various online sources. I'll be sure to paste that information in the episode's description. I will also post my contact information for any feedback. We invite listeners to send in requests for topics on future episodes. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to follow to receive updates. My name is Nick Martin, and you've been listening to the Sound Bites Podcast.